Hey guys, it's Wednesday, and working on getting another interview for you next week. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But I know people have been wanting me to do Ghostbusters content, so I'm going to. The thing is, I haven't seen the movie, like a lot of people. I decided that I wasn't going to see the movie because I wasn't going to pay the nerd tax. As I said before in the video I made before the movie came out with Momo, I didn't have any interest in seeing the film. I didn't think I would enjoy it. It didn't look very funny. It's interesting, I like Melissa McCarthy as a person. I think she's very talented. I don't like the work she does with Paul Feig. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. But so, I didn't even especially like Bridesmaids. Now, Melissa McCarthy movies in the past have gotten over the fact that their overseas box office, their global box office, is not great by having very small budgets. Now, Ghostbusters has a big budget. It was like a $150 million movie. I'm not sure why. Probably mostly the salaries of the people involved. But apparently, I understand it's very CGI heavy, which is too bad because the original really wasn't. The original had, the big special effects thing at the end, and then Slimer. The rest of the effects were very simple. And these are ghosts. We've known how to do ghosts on film for quite some time. So I think it would have been smarter to keep the budget down on this and just make it a solid comedy. But to put it in perspective, how expensive Ghostbusters was. Previous Melissa McCarthy vehicles, Bridesmaids only made $169 million domestically. Now that was fine because Bridesmaids was made for peanuts. The Heat, I believe that's the movie she made with Sandra Bullock, made $159.6 million domestically. Again, smaller budget, right? But the projection for Ghostbusters is not even going to be that. They're projecting $120 to $130 million domestically. Now, it will make more money overseas, but a Melissa McCarthy movie, whatever his name is, Melissa McCarthy movie, has never cleared $200 million abroad. Now, Sony invested heavily, so you may be thinking, oh, that's fine. That's like a $200 million profit. That's not how films work, because you have to add more money for the cost of the marketing in a film, because that's not tacked into its production budget. And Sony apparently invested huge, especially a last-minute buy when the movie wasn't projecting well. They made this huge ad buy to pull the projection up from $30 million to where it ended up sitting. And that means that they will not make very much money. Now, they could have made some money off licensing. Those commercials with Leslie Jones doing the car commercials and things like that. They're paid for that. And so we don't know how much money they're going to pull in that way. They may clear some dough because of the popularity of the brand. Now, they're certainly not going to get that the next time around because this one didn't set the world on fire. There likely will be a sequel because of the popularity of the brand, but it will likely be a very different movie. Now, this comes down to how they chose to market this film. And this is, I think, the important thing, because with a box office of $46 million, only $46 million in a summer tentpole film, this is a failure of marketing as well as a failure of the quality of the product. Because you guys know as well as I do, it's not uncommon now for movies to make, 70, 80, $100 million. The Secret Life of Pets made huge its first weekend. The Legend of Tarzan, which was panned, made a similar amount its first weekend. They're also expecting a huge drop-off for Ghostbusters, by the way. And so what happened with the marketing? Well, basically, people saw the YouTube trailers and didn't think it was funny, which is what I said. And Sony didn't listen to that. The marketers didn't listen to that. They decided to wade. They didn't even wade in. They dove headfirst into the culture war. And I said at the time that was not going to benefit the film. That was going to hurt the film. But my belief is that Sony did so well with the, what was that movie, The Interview? The one that Kim Jong-un didn't like? They did so well with the controversy off of that they thought there was no such thing as bad publicity. In a summer tentpole film, there is absolutely such thing as bad publicity. The media loved the narrative that the Ghostbusters film was some sort of target for anti-feminist trolls. Well, the movie-going public doesn't care. And, you know, Deadline actually says flat out, it should never be about supporting or not supporting a movie just because it stars women. That's benevolent sexism. And benevolent sexism is still sexism. And this is not just going to hurt now. This is not just going to hurt the Ghostbusters franchise. This is going to hurt all female-led films, because Hollywood has this nasty tendency to take the wrong lesson from things. Because Hollywood executives are never, what? It wasn't our fault. It must have been inherently something about the product. Oh, it's the actors. Hollywood loves to blame on-camera talent. Always. Trust me, I used to be on-camera talent. But what happens now? Well, this brings us to the really unfortunate thing that happened 2 days ago with Leslie Jones getting bombarded by, you know, I've seen people who are raging shitlords on the best days going, this is wrong. This is just like way beyond the pale, way just, I saw some of it. I saw it while it was going on, and I was just like, I actually tweeted her saying, I thought that we were beyond doing, you know, the old comparing black people to gorillas thing. I was wrong. And, you know, Jones is telling Twitter to have bigger rules, better rules, stricter rules, and she's right. Twitter is ultimately responsible for this because they let this go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. It was going on all day. And it was inexcusable. Twitter abdicates responsibility for what goes on their service. As I've said before, Twitter is a publisher like anyone else and is the ultimate. The buck stops at Twitter because they choose what they allow to put on their service. And if you scroll through the tweets, it's like hours. It starts at, it was earlier than this. News services are picking it up. It's starting at around 9 p.m. last night and continuing at 1 a.m. I saw it before that. I know, because I was watching the Republican Gong Show. You know, I shouldn't say the Republicans, the Trump Gong Show last night. And it happened before, that. You know, there are some usual suspects. There were some brigades. There were some calls to arms. But this is the dynamic that we understand on the internet, that something starts as a natural, people are pissed off. It starts that, and some people don't express that anger in the best ways, which is a natural human tendency. I'm not going to say people should do better, because no, when people are angry, they're not their best selves. But instead of, how do I explain this? Instead of the media reporting, people were really angry and some misogyny happened, it was misogynists hate this film. And so that became the narrative. And so that emboldened people who make their money off of doing hateful, horrible things, people who are professional trolls, who actually get paid for their status as a muckraker. That brings them on, plus the trolls that just want the lulz, that have found, for people who don't know what a lolcow is, it's somebody who is near guaranteed to scream if you poke them a few times. And they determined that this Ghostbusters film was a lolcow. And so the media, when they create these narratives of horrible misogynists, it brings out the legitimate, the legitimate trolls. Legitimate troll sounds strange. That's the wrong word. But it brings out the truly bad actors. It brings out the actual misogynists, and they do exist. Okay, it brings out the actual racists. We know actual racists exist. I think people are sort of more willing to accept that actual racists exist as opposed to actual misogynists exist, which are odd. But this grows, and Sony and the media painted a huge target on the Ghostbusters franchise. So of course, who are they going to go after? The person who has the most to go after. So they targeted the lone black woman in the cast, and this is part of the reason you don't engage in tokenism. This is part of the reason you don't have just one black person in your cast, because that makes them a target. They are obviously different, and it makes it easier for these online trolls to just attack this person, because they know, first of all, they have the most ammunition. They can get her on her gender. They can get her on what some people claim to be a lack of gender conformance. Conforming? Is conformance a word? People think she's mannish, quote unquote, and so they go after her on that. And I think that's exceptionally cruel, because people can't help. If they're tall or if they're broader shouldered, you cannot help that. Then, people go after a race, people go after a gender. It's just, there's so many things they can pick up. They can just continue to milk that lolcow for hours and hours and hours, which is exactly what happened. Now, that's not the same as blaming the victim, because the first time something like this happens to you, it is awful. The second time is actually worse, because then it's happening again. After that, it gets somewhat easier. But Twitter knows this is going on. And every time something like this happens, some spokesperson from Twitter says, we know we have to get better. No, they have shown no interest in getting better. And the trolls know it. The people who earn their living being muckrakers know it. They know this is open season. And it's too bad, because Twitter is a good service in other ways. But something like this that is so blatant should be shut down. And it's not because she's a celebrity. I want to make that clear. I think this should be something for every person who is getting waves and waves and waves and waves and waves of malicious hate based on not what they've done, but what they are. And it's the ultimate blame lies at the foot of Twitter, because trolls do these things because they can. A real troll doesn't have anything emotionally invested in it. They get this sense of moral superiority by exploiting a weakness that allows them to be awful. And unfortunately, all this, outpouring of support for Leslie Jones is just going to make them want to try again, because they feel those, I stand with so-and-so. They see that as more lulz. Heads they win, tails they win. It's very easy to be an internet troll, especially in services that allow you to have multiple accounts. I mean, that's the first thing Twitter could do, is limit the number of multiple accounts a person has. And the right way of doing it, I mean, I see people on Twitter advertising that they have like 18 plus accounts, and Twitter doesn't shut this down. You see that, oh, well, there's your account. I think you should be able to have more than one account on Twitter, but I think that you should have a main account, and then accounts under that account. So it would also make it easier to manage because then you don't have to log in for the same thing. But I mean, you should be able to have a personal Twitter account and then a Twitter for your business. You should be able to have that. You should be able to have your professional Twitter account as an individual, and then your thing with an anime character as an avatar that you do so you can just speak freely without your boss seeing it. I don't have a problem with stuff like that. But that's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with people who have numerous accounts to try to make the dislike of something look bigger than it actually is. And people are like, no, we should be able to have anonymity. So I'm not advocating taking away anonymity. I'm talking about taking away this prismatic plurality that some people advocate on the internet. I think that you can choose the self you want to be on the internet, but that self should be persistent, if that makes any sense. So yeah, you have work self and you have home self. Or for people who have, for people who are struggling with things like gender identity, they can have, their female performance online if they so choose, as long as, you're not asking people for money or things like that under false pretenses. I think that's fine. But stuff like this, there is something that can be done. But it's not just Twitter. It's that movie companies have to learn that these issues are still real. And especially now with how charged the rhetoric is. You can't make movies these beacons for any cause. That's just going to cause trouble. It's a narrative, it's story first, it's entertainment, it's a story about this. It is not for social anything, it is not for justice anything, it is entertainment. Let people come to their own conclusions that it's something that helps them. Don't tell them, this is a blow for fill in the blank, black people, Latinos, women, Chinese people, whatever. Don't do that. It only leads to trouble, not profits.